it's time for tutorial number 7. We're going to start our project, and we are going to make a soda can. We're gonna model the can, just kind of a simple model, and I'm going to show you how you can make your own label for that too. So that will be fun. First thing we want to think about is organization. I've deleted the queue, I deleted everything. We've just got our empty scene. First thing we want to do though is go to File, click Save, and then I have a folder created called Soda Can Prop Folder. Oh, I didn't spell folder right, but you know, you can fix that. But I'm just going to call this Soda Can Prop Blend File. That way, if I give this to anyone to work on or to work with, if they don't already know, just make it as clear as possible. I know it says .blend, but just to make it as clear as possible, this is the Blender file. You could even name it Blender file or blend file, either is. I'm going to click Save. Now it's saved, right? Next thing we want to do is to grab some reference images and some information. It's not a good idea to try and just do it from memory, how you think something works. For simple objects, that's okay, but it's likely that you won't really get the proportions exactly right. And it's something that I definitely have a lot of impulse to do just whenever I want to start something, but the best models come out of preparation. And so in this folder, I have two reference images. I have one showing the dimensions of the soda can, and I have one that we are actually going to almost trace in 3D. And so now we can actually put these into Blender. I want to have on the left side of the screen, you could put it on the right, it doesn't really matter, but on the left side of the screen, I want to have the dimensions, right? A picture with the dimensions, just so I can readily access it. I'm going to go up to the left corner here, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag to the right. And you'll see that I'm dragging out a new window. I don't need it to be huge or anything, and I can just go over to this bar and click and drag to change it whenever I want. But yeah, now we have like 2 3D viewports. But we want to view our image over here, right? So how do we do that? We can go up here, click, and go to Image Editor, click Open. Okay, I grabbed the wrong image here. I now insert the right image. All right, perfect. This is exactly what we wanted. So we've got a diameter, we've got a radius. Well, I also said earlier that we wanted to trace our can. What do I mean by that? Well, if I press Shift A and go over to Image and click Reference, it's actually going to insert a reference image into the scene, and you can see that I've labeled the reference image as such. Right? Now it's set to align to view right now, and what that means is it's going to appear to face the camera, which will make it crooked from other views. But I'm going to show you could uncheck this to have it be normal, but I'm going to leave it checked just to show you how you could fix that. So if I double click to, oh, that's the wrong one. Soda can reference image, yes. So see if we orbit and pan, it's kind of at an angle. And real quick, we're just going to call this soda can reference image up here in the outliner. Remember, you can double click on an entry in the outliner to rename it. Good to get in the habit of naming things so other people who look at your work and yourself later can actually understand what you were doing. See, this is a weird angle. To get it back to normal, we're actually going to show you a new menu that I haven't shown off before. Remember, you can press T to bring up this left menu and T to make it go away. You also press N to bring up this menu on the right and to make it go away. So if we press N, it shows some properties of the objects, and it's positioned at the origin, 0, 0, 0, which is what we want, as that's where our objects spawn into the scene, but the rotation is weird. These are odd numbers, right? These are off numbers, and the reason they're off is because they're meant to face the camera we had when we spawned in the image. So if we get it to be aligned more globally, we're just going to change this to 0, and it looks like we want this to be 0, and if we want this to be straight up, 90. We'll make it go straight up. So now that is aligned perfectly. It's standing straight up, no bend, no rotation at all. I'm also going to grab on the Z a little bit. We can either adjust it here, or we can pull it up here. I'm going to pull it about to the line. right here, just kind of resting on the floor. And so now we're going to spawn in our cylinder. So I'm going to hit Shift A, go over to Mesh, and I'm going to call this, we're going to click Cylinder. And here's our cylinder, right? Now, this has to be done before I click anything. If I click away, there was a menu on the left here that no longer exists. Let me spawn it again so I can show you. I spawn this in, there's this arrow right here where it says add cylinder. If I left click anywhere else, it's gone. Right? I can't even get that back if I undo. You can only access this menu as soon as you spawn in an object. And so I click in the menu, it has object properties. And you'll see that this soda can, let me just press N to get rid of this other menu. This soda can is pretty smooth. If I click Shade Smooth, like I showed last time, you can see that it already looks flawless. You know, it already looks as if it was perfectly smooth. So we don't really need any more detail than that. And plus, this is just a soda can, right? It's a prop. It's a background object. It's not a main entryway or like a huge set piece. It's a soda can, right? So using this much geometry, let me just tab into edit mode. Using this much geometry is, I would say, wasteful just for a soda can. So we're going to get rid of that, and instead we're going to play around. You want to stick to either 32, 16, or 8 for the vertice count. 4 doesn't quite work. You notice we're halving each time. 4, and you've got a square. Because effectively, the vertices are the sides, so we've got 4 sides. 8 would be pretty blocky. Depending on the style of the game, this can be great if you have a more low poly style. But we can get away with 16 for the reason that we have the shading auto smooth. So that's pretty smooth, right? That's pretty dang smooth. That's going to be good enough. So I'm going to stick with 16 just because it's not a main prop and it gets the job done. It looks smooth enough. But now the dimensions, right? So this image over here is saying that the diameter is 6.62 centimeters, which means if the radius is half of the diameter, then that means the radius, which we enter right here, is 3.31 centimeters. And so we can actually type into our menu here 3.31 centimeters, and it will create it. And it's saying the height is 12.2 centimeters. We go over to where it says depth here. This is our height. Just type in 12.2 centimeters, and bang. If we press the period key, we can zoom in. And I'm just going to collapse this menu. That's all we really need from it. And this is a soda can. This is what it would look like in real scale. Two things. Why do we make it real scale? You don't have to, as long as if we trace this, the proportions of the can are going to be right. So we don't have to worry about any of that. The reason why I would make it real scale is just so that there doesn't have to be any scaling later in the game engine. And if everything is made as real to scale as possible, then you avoid inconsistencies in the sizes of objects and the scale of objects. I've seen people make objects that end up massive compared to other objects, and it just creates more work down the line for whoever has to resize those objects. So it's best to create them at a uniform scale, and the most uniform scale for objects based on the real world is how they actually exist, right? Because we actually have information, like for the soda can, that we can look up about it. And so if I also made a table using real world units at a real world scale, then the two would already be scaled accurately together with each other because they're both made using real world measurements. Okay, so it's best, if possible, to use real world units for your dimensions, just so that everything lines up nicely with every other thing. So okay, we got to get this to be a lot smaller. I'm going to scale Shift Y because we're not scaling in this direction because it's not going in or out. So I'm going to scale Shift Y. I'm just going to make this a lot smaller. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to grab. I'm going to go down. I'm going to select my other object. Period key, zoom in. And then I'm going to scale Shift Y again. It's kind of getting hard to see, although we're getting pretty good results. We can fix this first by pressing 1 to go into front orthographic, or again, we can press the tilde key and go to front. Orthographic just means there's no perspective being applied. So it really makes this lining up much clearer. Again, Shift Z is X-ray mode. The nice thing about reference images is that they're not affected by X-ray mode. So we can actually line up this object very nicely without having to worry about overlap. Okay, this is about right. It's about lined up. We're going to grab it down. And there are a bit more. There's kind of a problem here since it doesn't quite line up perfectly, and that's because I believe this is a different kind of soda can than this can. So I'm just going to scale on the Z a little bit, grab Z, bring it down. Scale Z, grab Z, scale Z, grab Z, until it about lines up. Right? And there it is. That's our can. With our cylinder, I'm going to call this soda can. All right. And yeah, so just to recap, when you're making a model, you want to consider 1, how important it will be to the game. The soda can is just a prop, so we chose to start our shape with less geometry because it doesn't need a lot of background piece. You want to gather images for reference, you want to gather dimensions for reference, and it would be organized with file names and names in the outliner. Yeah, after this, we will start modeling our soda can. So thanks for tuning in.